Speaking of change, we're getting on kind of a rant here about you have to update and evolve and adapt in life because you get new information and you get new tape. So I am still a Lamar Jackson fan, but it does appear, we got more film, we got more tape. Tennessee beats him. He's not quite as dynamic. Is it what opponents are doing? Is it what Baltimore is doing? You tell me.
I think it's both. I think what we've seen, particularly in their last two games against Cincinnati and against Philadelphia, is Cincinnati took a really defined tactic of loading the box, literally putting 9 players really stacked inside. And what they're doing there is they're saying, you're not going to run the ball on us. We're daring you to throw the ball, and you're going to have to throw the ball to the perimeter outside. The Eagles did the same kind of thing differently, but that's what teams have done the last number of weeks. And now it's up to the Ravens to say, you know what, if you're going to play that way, we will have to throw the ball to the perimeter. So now it's going to be up to the Ravens and Lamar Jackson and their receivers in particular to really become a factor in a different way, because this whole offense has been built on Lamar Jackson as a runner, not as a ball distributor. The ball distribution and the passing numbers are a function of the offense built with him as a runner. So now they may have to adjust. I don't want to say change, but they may have to adjust and tweak and say, you know what, we're going to have to be a little more proactive throwing the football.
Okay, so now I have seen kind of the opposite with Kyler Murray. He came into the league, and now this year I'm like, oh, I see improvement. I see. Now, again, is it what the staff is doing? Is he more comfortable? Kyler today looks a little more comfortable than a year ago, and he looks better, frankly, than a year ago. Is it DeAndre Hopkins? What is it?
Well, it's an interesting point because, again, 2 weeks ago on Monday Night Football, he did not throw the ball well at all versus the Cowboys, even though they won big. This past week against Seattle, he threw the ball very well. Now, I think he's an excellent thrower, and I don't view his throwing as an issue. The main thing with him is you want to make sure that he can be as clean in the pocket as he can be. Against Seattle, he was hardly pressured because one of the issues he had as a rookie a year ago is there was too much pressure, and because he's so small, he overreacts to pressure because he's just small, and he would throw too many balls falling away with poor balance. Now, he's pretty good at that. He's probably had to learn to develop that, Colin, but he's pretty special in terms of talent. And then you add in the running element, both scrambling, second reaction, and the design runs, which cause a lot of problems for defenses. So he has a chance to be a really good player.
So I was saying there's a lot of elements to Seattle that I think are Super Bowl worthy, but their defensive line is so poor that it undermines the back end of their defense. I like Carlos Dunlap. What, in your opinion, is he a special enough player to solve their defensive issues up front?
Well, he's better than what they have. So, so obviously, I guess he's not playing this week, but he'll play starting the following week, and he'll play a lot of snaps. He's always been kind of freakishly athletic.
Yeah.
He's built like a basketball player. People never viewed him as great because he didn't have 17, 18 sacks. But he can make special pass rushes. He's long. He's agile.
Yeah.
At times he's Gumby-like. He has strength. So I think he's a good player, and he will clearly improve that defensive front because they put no pressure on the quarterback.
You know, I'm going to ask you about a quarterback I haven't asked a lot. This is a franchise I almost never talk about. So before the season, 2 people I trust were selling me hard on Detroit. On Detroit. And I'm like, I don't like the coach. I don't love the ownership. And I'm hot and cold on Stafford, who has a great arm, but I just feel like it doesn't win the game. So my friends are calling me. They're like, oh, that win against Atlanta, that Stafford. What does the tape say on Matt Stafford at this point in his career?
Well, I'm going to tell you this, Colin, because I was home this summer, as many of us were. I did a deep dive on a lot of quarterbacks. Now, I've obviously watched Stafford his whole career, but I think I watched 350 snaps in a row in a 1 or 2 day period of Matthew Stafford. He's a pretty special player. He's been on bad teams. He's won a lot of games in his career in the fourth quarter. And a lot of people look at that and think that's the measure of a really good quarterback. He's done that a lot. He has always been a special thrower going back to his days at Georgia. And I think that he's a really good player. Now, their defense over the last number of years has been awful, and they really have not had a run game. So you're really asking Matthew Stafford to carry this team every week. And I think it's very hard for any player. I mean, if we're talking about the all-time greats, yeah, maybe there are a few of those guys, but it's very hard to ask any quarterback or have any team go into a game every week and say to your quarterback, if you don't play great football, we really don't have a chance to win.
Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't think is as special a talent, but I again, take the Miami game out. And as good as Kyle Shanahan is, I've seen his record without Garoppolo. I've always felt he's better than all the scouts say, the internet says. I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback. But when you look at him now as his foot gets healthier, what do you see going forward? What did you see last week?
Well, it's funny you put it in a list category. I'm not a list guy, so when you say top 5, Jimmy Garoppolo is an extremely efficient player in a highly well-schemed offense. And we've discussed this numerous times. That's the job of a coach. The job of a coach is to create a passing game with your route concepts, your route combinations, your design to define the reads and the throws for the quarterback so the ball can come out on time and he can be comfortable playing the position. Now, that's not going to happen on 100% of his dropbacks, but you try to do that as often as possible. Now, you do get to 3rd and long, but even when I watched Garoppolo this summer and watched a ton of them, Kyle Shanahan does a really good job in those situations as well. So Jimmy Garoppolo is a good thrower of the football. He's not truly mobile and athletic in the sense that he's a big-time second reaction player. He certainly can do design rollouts, but he's an efficient quarterback in a really well-schemed system.
So I had an epiphany last night. It was terrible. So I have loved Tua the whole time. And then Joy's laughing at me as I say this. So I had an epiphany last night, and I thought to myself, people say size doesn't matter in the NFL. That's nonsense because the 30 best quarterbacks that have ever played, 28 are over 6'1.5", 6'2". So size has something to do with it, seeing over the line. Secondly, if you take the small quarterbacks that have worked in this league, Fran Tarkenton, Russell Wilson, Michael Vick, they're incredibly, absurdly mobile. He is not absurdly mobile.
You wouldn't call Drew Brees absurdly mobile.
Okay, so that's my point. There is one great quarterback in league history that is not overly mobile or big. It's Brees. So and that's who Saban says he is. So in order for it to work, the keyhole he has to fit into is, can he be Drew Brees? And I sat there this morning and I thought the reason Herbert's so good is he's big, he's got a big arm, he can run. And I'm like, yeah, Tua's not big, doesn't have a huge arm, and doesn't move. I had this epiphany. He's not going to work. There it is.
Well, it's funny you say that, and I'm glad that Nick Saban agrees with me, or I agree with Nick Saban, however you want to say that. He probably knows a little more football than I do, but when I evaluated Tua coming out in the draft, I said that for him to be a high-level NFL quarterback, he would have to play like Drew Brees. So I felt that from studying his tape. He's not Russell Wilson. He's a rhythmic player. He's very quick on his feet on his drop. He sets up. He delivers the football. He transfers his weight. He's very accurate in the short to intermediate areas. He's not truly a second reaction player. He's not immobile, just like Drew Brees in his prime was not immobile. Drew Brees was a good athlete, but not an athlete in the way that Russell Wilson is, or certainly a Kyler Murray. So I think, to me, Tua, to be great, would have to play the position like a Drew Brees.
All right. I'm freaking out. Got to watch the game.
Gee, I'm glad Nick and I agree on that.
So last week, everybody went crazy with Baker Mayfield, and I said, timeout. The fact that Joe Burrow got hit like 12 times, has a bad O-line, had no running game, the fact that Baker had to overcome him several times. I thought Burrow, when you consider what he has around him, I'm blown away by Joe. I was blown away with him this weekend. What's the tape say?
Yeah, they run a very specific kind of offense. They play a lot with 3 wide receivers. Over 80% of his pass drops have come with 3 wide receivers on the field. They play out of empty sets more than any team in the league. And empty more often than not helps an offensive line, because when you're in empty sets, you're doing a very rhythmic passing game. Burrow's really good at that. He's very rhythmic. He has a very good feel for what he sees, both pre-snap and post-snap. So the ball comes out. The problem is you do get into situations where you need deeper drops, and this O-line does struggle in pass protection. But Burrow has been very efficient. There's a refinement to his game that you don't normally see with a rookie quarterback.
And finally, before we get to the big play, I had Justin Herbert on this week.